What's going on, and welcome on in to the Doghouse. It is time for the fifth installment of the Doghouse. We are getting you ready for the Cleveland Browns and the Washington Commanders coming up this weekend. We got a great show planned. You will see I've got a special guest host here tonight, and we also are going to have a special guest coming in just a bit. Anthony Armstrong, former wide receiver for Washington, and now the host of the Believe in Commanders podcast. He's going to join us to get ready. And then after Anthony kicks off, my co-host Evan Mueller and I will talk a little bit more about the Browns and everything going on with them right now, all the Christmas and unfortunate stuff as we get ready to try to figure things out this upcoming weekend. Doghouse is brought to you proudly here on the OBR streaming network. Make sure you are tuned into everything OBR. Get to the OBR.com. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube and Twitch and everywhere that you can be a part of the OBR. So, Evan Mueller, welcome into the Doghouse for the first time. I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Not excited that, the team's not doing great. And it's always hard to talk about the team after weeks like that, but happy to be here anyways.
Yeah, it was a stunning development in Vegas where the Cleveland Browns they're just finding every way to lose. Like it's the polar opposite of last year, right, Abby? They're just finding every way.
Yes, it really is when you say it like that. Like last year, it was finding in the craziest ways to win games, having Joe Flacco come in and do what he did. Like we truly found different ways to win each time. And this time it's like, this most recent week, usually we're used to the quarterback, Deshaun Watson, being the problem. He was not the problem this week. And we found other ways to lose and to make things harder on ourselves. And it just seems like it's something new every single week that's causing this team to continue to struggle.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of simplicity to it. I think people don't love that because people love to dive into all the ins and outs and the in-depth stuff. But I think there's certain things that are very cool when your offensive line can't block anybody.
Yeah,
it's going to make it really hard, and we've seen it for years here. We haven't seen a lot of Browns teams where the offensive line can't block anybody. So it's a totally new thing where they aren't blocking anybody. But again, last week against Vegas, you complete an 82-yard touchdown pass to give you the lead late in the game, and it gets called back on a real ticky-tack holding call. Again, it's just a new way every week to figure out a way to lose. That's how this season has started.
Yeah, and that one was so frustrating too because it felt like the other parts of the game we truly beat ourselves, like it was us making those mistakes. But that one in particular, I'm still just like, you can call that, I guess, but man, that seemed real ticky-tacky, and it was the difference in the game. So it is unfortunate when you feel like it wasn't in your hands on like things that you could control in the game.
Well, I see our special guest has jumped in the background, so we want to get him in because Abby and I will talk a little bit more specifics Browns a little bit later in the show. But our special guest is here. He is one of the co-hosts of the Believe in Commanders podcast. He played wide receiver for the Redskins. I got to ask him if he calls himself a Commander or a Redskin. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm really excited to have him on. It's Anthony Armstrong. Anthony, welcome into the Doghouse.
What's going on? I'm glad to be in the Doghouse willingly, not being put in the Doghouse. So I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Mike. Abby, good to see you.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, so we were just sitting here talking, and one of the really interesting things, Anthony, about these two teams that are going to face off over there in Maryland this upcoming weekend is it's the polar opposite start for these two teams. While the Browns are just inventing ways to lose, they're not playing up to the standard that they had set for themselves. And 1-3, not a great way to start. The Washington Commanders, man, Jaden Daniels looks like a stud. And all of a sudden, out of this franchise that's really struggled over the past, a lot of years, man, there is a lot of life. There's got to be a ton of excitement over there for the Washington Commanders?
There is all type of excitement, and it's been brewing since the sale happened last July. Well, not last July, but 2 Julys ago. Ever since then, the temperature has changed. The clouds have been moved from over the DMV area, and Commanders fans can smile. They've had everything hit, and the one thing that's been missing, Mike, has been on-field performance. You've got the draft, you've got the ownership, you've got the head coaching change. Now you got your quarterback and you've got some results on the field. So for them to be sitting 3-1 at the top of the division for once in a while, this is a good place to be, and the fans are excited for it.
I don't. Whoever saw it coming? Whoever saw it coming?
I did.
Again,
I did.
Did you see it coming? You call this
I did.
to start the year?
I did. Well, the thing is like I'm an optimistic guy, right? I'm like, okay, if everything hits, where can they be? And I said, at the best case scenario, you win the division because it's the NFC East where people have not decided to win the division back to back since early. Well, I think maybe it's been like 10 something years. Like I think Philly did it early or late 2010s when Philly went back to back. So nobody ever goes back to back. And now you find yourself in a position where you've got a team that has a lot of unknowns. With the people they brought in have a lot of knowledge of the other squads, and those other teams really haven't gotten better. Dallas hadn't improved, Philly hadn't improved, and the Giants are still the Giants. So hey, what time better than to try to make a run and find yourself into the playoffs? So worst case scenario, you can sneak into that 7th spot, but coming out 3-1, this is better than expected. 2-2 was the worst that I wanted them to be coming out of the quarter, but jumping out hot, things look good moving forward.
Yeah, I think one of the more impressive things from the Commanders so far has been the fact that they've only punted like once in the last 3 games or something insane like that. Just the way that offense is rolling, and Jaden is so confident. That stat in particular is really pretty crazy to me.
It is, and especially when you think that Tress Way has been the one bright spot on this team for years, and you just say, hey, at least we've got a really good punter for whatever that's worth. And since he's passed that 5 on, the 5 is still running really well with Jaden, and now Tress gets to sit back and enjoy it from the sideline for once. And I mean, the offense is efficient. Jaden is making great decisions with the football. He's not forcing it anywhere. Now let me say this: when he does force it places, it's in a smart decision. For example, he threw a ball to Terry McLaurin, and it was high, and it was into double coverage, but it was either Terry's going to make a great catch or it's going to be incomplete. And so I'm not mad at that throw because you have to do that in this league sometimes. But when it's first down and you take the check down and to get you 4 or 5 yards, whenever you're running the ball and you're averaging 5.8 like they did against Arizona, that puts you in very favorable positions on second down, 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2. The playbook is wide open in that instance compared to last year when they gave up 65 sacks. They were consistently in 2nd and 3rd and long, which makes your playbook about thin as about 10 plays or so, like Denzel and remember the Titans? But it's all deep shots, and you're not going to be efficient like that. So right now they're in favorable down and distances, and they're able to make some plays, and Jaden is just playing lights out.
Yeah, I think also the rushing attack for the Commanders has been pretty decent so far. And that's something I'm really concerned about for the Browns defense coming into this matchup, because they, played what was supposed to be a bad Raiders rushing attack last week and let them run all up and down the field on them. So I feel like that's going to be a key factor this week for the Commanders on if they're going to continue that against the Browns, who struggled in that area.
Well, it better be, because you've got Myles Garrett over there. And if he's able to just hunt every single play, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So getting downhill is going to be key. And I'm very happy with what you've seen from this offense on the running game. Because you think Cliff Kingsbury, you think wide open offense, right? You think 5 receivers, eligible linemen if he can get it, but he's going to throw it everywhere. But now you're seeing an offense that has some balance to it. I mean, they've been chirping on the fact of Dan Quinn saying he wants his ratio to be about 55 combined completions and rushing attempts. And I want to say against Arizona, it was at like 62 or 63. So when they're in that mode of running the ball, good 20 to 30 times and completing 26, 27 passes, the offense is humming, and the running game is a big part of that.
Anthony, I'm going to go back to my first question. Anthony, are you a Redskin or a Commander, or are you both?
Man, you know, I know what it was when I was there, so I'm definitely a Redskin in that instance. But I mean, I can respect it. I can respect that folks want to make a change, and for what it's worth, I'll be a former. Yeah, I always settle with Washington. You can't go wrong if you're like former Washington receiver. Then you just kind of stay out of the doghouse.
I don't know. Well, the bad doghouse. I don't know if you noticed, but that's when I was making our posts, like advertising you coming on Twitter. You were just former Washington wide receiver.
Yeah,
We do. We
Yeah.
got the same thing in Cleveland. I don't know. I call the former Indians players Indians.
yeah.
Now they're Guardians. I don't know what to call them. I don't know what to call them. So it's
I
been
can't.
cool.
I honestly haven't taken to the Guardians yet because it just doesn't. It just doesn't seem right. It feels like it's a scene from a movie.
A little bit. Yeah, there's a little to it, but you know what? We adapt, and
Yeah.
we've had our teams pulled from us here in Cleveland. So I don't
Yes.
really care. I don't really care what they call them as long
Call
as
them
they're still
anything.
here.
Yeah.
Right.
As long as I have a team in my city, call them whatever you want.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
I feel that. I spent the training camp in Cleveland, and in 2014, the Johnny Manziel summer,
oh
Oh
dear
God.
God.
and
I'm
that
so
was
sorry.
man. You know, I had got to have a little soft spot for y'all folks up there in Berea, you drive around like everybody's so nice, and I'm just like, man, they need a winner up here in Cleveland.
Yeah.
Y'all can start in week 6, but you know, when it comes to this game against Washington, just hang tight.
Yeah. So when you look at this matchup and you look at the way, and you probably heard us when you first jumped on, we were talking about how the Browns have just been finding ways to lose games, which is just such a change for what we went through last year, where they had 5 different quarterbacks, and this offensive line was hurt just like this last year, and they just found ways to win. Now they're finding ways to lose games to teams that they are expected to beat. So when you look at the way the Brown season has started, and you look at what they're going to kind of run at the Commanders this week, just your impressions of the Browns, and where do you think they can cause some problems for the Commanders?
You know, it's one of those things that on the record you're seeing that they're not having much success. I'm sorry, my little guy is trying to swipe some food from me. He's like
Is it
coming to
good? What do you
steal
eat?
the. Well, I got the littlest one in here, and I'm feeding her, and then the second youngest took the bag of cornflakes. So he's like, I'm out. I wanted some cereal. So, uh, okay. So
You got to
with
take care of those kids, or you're going to be in the doghouse.
man, exactly, the bad one. So with Cleveland, when I look at it, obviously you think running attack. I think that's all Chubb is coming back to practice. Wouldn't expect him to play on Sunday, but you think physicality on offense. I mean, Deshaun Watson, the on-field performance hasn't gotten back to what everybody's expected, but there's weapons outside. Amari Cooper and Jerry Jeudy are some really top-notch receivers. They can run some really good routes, and they'll give some trouble and fits to the young secondary for Washington. They had a much better performance last week against Arizona, but outside of that, you know, they haven't proven a lot to me.
Or anybody.
Yeah.
They haven't
Yeah.
proven anything to anybody.
Well, especially if the drops continue like they have for especially Amari in particular the last couple of weeks. It is devastating to drives for that offense every time that happens. It stalls things quite a bit.
It does, and I mean, you talk about finding ways to lose. That's where the Commanders have been for the past 25 years. You just find a way to drop games. But you know, the thing about going against a team like Cleveland, they've had success in the past. Here, come sit with me.
Hey.
Oh, he doesn't want to. I'm
I
sorry.
know. There's a real solid chance one of mine pop in behind me. So
Okay.
it happens.
Cleveland could have success, right? And it's one of those ones where you just don't want to walk in and expect this team to, just underperform, right? Because then you'll get beat. I think it's more of a test for Washington to show who they are and if they want to dominate. Give me 1 second, please.
You're all good. You're all good. We got kids. This is what happens. This is what we do. We roll with this.
It's showbiz,
It's showbiz. That's right. Last week, actually, Abby, I was on with Jay Richardson, and my kid comes in, and we're having like tornado warnings. He comes in freaked out.
Yeah.
It happens. We hang out with the kids in the doghouse.
You just never know. Well, I have no children, so I will be safe here running. No one's running around. It's just me. We're all good.
Yeah, right. Fair. All right, so we'll give Anthony a minute to get himself situated. I do have a couple more questions for him, and Anthony, I think, is going to stick around with us for about 10 more minutes, and then we'll get him out. But Abby, um, I, when you look at the Commanders
Mhm.
and the way they've started, when you look at Jaden Daniels,
Yeah.
and he's a guy that's running the ball, he's passing the ball. They are really effective running the ball. We've kind of gone into these last couple of weeks, Abby, against the Giants, which is a crappy running attack, and the
Mhm.
Raiders, which is a crappy running attack, and come up completely short in that situation. A lot of it has to do, like, is there an explanation we have here for the missed tackles that are happening on the defense for the Cleveland Browns? Because I think that's such a huge part of them not being able to stop anybody running the ball is they're not tackling
Yeah.
anybody.
No, it is really hard to find an explanation because it's not like that's not been the standard in Cleveland previously. And I feel like this has been like the ongoing debate of like, is it players or is it coaching that is responsible for things like that, like missed tackles and that sort of thing? And it's hard for me to answer that as someone like who did not play the game on what percentage it is like a coach's fault and how much they're supposed to be ingraining that in their players and how much it's the actual player's fault for just not doing their job correctly. So I feel like that's been the ongoing debate within like the fan base and everyone.
It's funny you say and I just got back with that because tackling is something that when you're at the pro level, you would expect that you shouldn't have to tell somebody to tackle, right?
Right.
That's what you do. But then there is also that aspect of we need to work it so that you're used to it. Think Dan Campbell, right? Dan Campbell's like, we're going to be physical and we're just going to work physical all the time, so we're used to that type of thing. But outside of that, it gets down to the players, right? Somebody in the locker room is going to say, "Hey, this is not good enough to be for this defense, right? We're not going to settle for these type of things." And Bobby Wagner's the type of leader that has made his way to Washington that I could see being that type of guy. Now, is that person in Cleveland? I don't know. You would think it would be Miles. You would think maybe it's a Joker that y'all got there. So it's interesting to see, and I think young teams have to find a leader that kind of grows from within or is brought in to help take the players to the next level to be accountable to tackling and the small fundamentals of football.
It's interesting because I feel like Miles and JOK are both definitely leaders within the defense, but they're more like lead by example type guys, not as much a vocal, like out there type leaders. So I feel like oh, that's fun. I feel like that I don't know if we necessarily have that guy that's like the very outward vocal leader on the defense. That's kind of missing there.
I can see that, and I think that was something similar that I felt in Washington. Like you have the leaders when you're thinking like a John Allen and a Deron Payne, like they are leaders, or Terry McLaurin, they're leaders.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, they're not the outward vocal leaders. When you think about leaders, a lot of times you think either a best player or they force the patch on a quarterback who may not deserve it. But then sometimes there's leaders that are just quiet leaders, vocal, quiet leaders in the background that are doing things the right way. I think that's how a majority of these guys are. It's like, hey, you can follow Myles Garrett, you can follow JOK, you can follow Terry McLaurin because they're going to do it the right way. Now, are they the type of leaders that are going to turn around and make you do it the right way? Are they going to hold you accountable? That's the point. That's the part where I think you start to see a separation. Ironically enough, I'm reading this book by Nick. It's covering Nick Saban, talking about leadership, and he talks about getting his players to be leaders amongst the team rather than just him have to lead everything. So there's an interesting mix that kind of falls in line with that. And Washington and Adam Peters, he was very diligent in the fact of who he selected this draft. I think out of the 9 players, I want to say 7 of them were captains of their team. They put a label up there to saying they're looking for a commander, like a commander player, like the certain avatar is what they're looking for. And they've hit on that for most of these guys. So you can tell the type of locker room that they want to have. You can tell what type of values and what type of aura they want to have inside of that building. And that shift has happened right now. That shift has happened and it's starting to show up on the field for them.
Hey, just back to Jaden Daniels real quick, because I mean you could not have pegged a better start for this dude to start his career. But he's also a guy. I think he's running like 12 times a game, where he's actually carrying the football. And obviously, we've seen him throw the ball, and it's pretty. It's pretty when he throws the ball. And, we got a little soft spot here in Ohio for scary Terry McLaurin out there because he is maybe the most underrated receiver in all of football is Terry McLaurin.
Oh yeah.
But when you see your quarterback running the ball as much as Jaden Daniels is, and for those who maybe haven't seen him a ton outside of just highlights and stats, I think it always makes you a little bit nervous in the NFL to have your quarterback running the football a lot because one bad hit here or there, and all of a sudden, look at Anthony Richardson last year.
Sure.
So just talk about him using his legs and him using his brain out there and staying out of trouble and staying out of those big hits.
I think when you watch him play, statistically, just looking at numbers, 12 a game, you're like, oh, I don't know, man. But when you watch the game happen, the 12, there are a couple quarterback design runs. I think the one sweep to the right last week against Arizona, he had a lineman pulling Brian Robertson in front, Noah Brown, the biggest receiver in front. So they gave him a convoy of people to carry him into the end zone. But every other time he's running the ball, he's being much more selective, right? Like he's not trying to go in there and make somebody miss and drop a shoulder on somebody. He's not doing that. And I think they relayed that message to him. He's more selective with his running. He's looking to throw the ball when he does escape the pocket. And he's still looking to make some plays. I mean, honestly, look, he has 82% completion percentage on the season. So throwing the ball, do you want him to do that? Like he's shown that he can do that. I was talking with Lake Lewis. He covers the team, NFL Insider, and he's like, who do you compare him to? I was like, you got to really take away any type of color, right? Like we generally try to compare a black quarterback to a black quarterback and a white quarterback to a white quarterback. It's okay to say Jaden Daniels got a little Aaron Rodgers in him with a little, with some running skills of a Lamar. Like you can compare those two different things. I think he's a unique player, and he's very talented. He's under control when he's out there, and he's ahead of the curve. Like you don't expect him to be ahead of the curve. And when he runs, I don't feel like he doesn't know what he's doing. Like he's been through his process of 1, 2, 3. Okay, I don't like it. Let me go get 4 or 5 yards and let's play for the next down. So I'm okay with him running.
On the other side, when you look at this game defensively, the thing that's really given the Cleveland Browns, one, haven't been able to really run the football at all. And two, the thing that's really given the Browns fits is, again, they're having trouble blocking anybody. And Deshaun Watson has been under duress, I think, more than any other quarterback in the NFL when he drops back to throw the ball. So what would you anticipate the Commanders' play, strategy be as they come into this game and as they've seen, obviously, the Browns and how they've struggled in those areas?
They want to be a fast and physical team, really, but especially on defense. Coming into last week, it was there were calls out to the defensive line, especially the two big guys in the middle, like, hey, y'all need to show up to the party, right? Like everybody got their cups, but y'all not chipping in right now. And last week they got to it. They had 4 sacks of Kyler Murray, and they didn't give up any on the flip side, so that's even better. But they had 4 sacks. I mean, with a mix of players between linebackers, interior D-line, and defensive ends. So if they see that, that's a weak spot from Cleveland, any defense is ready. They're out there like a shark when they smell blood. Okay. So they're thinking we got to go get another 4 or 5 sacks, right? What did the last team do to them? Let's see if we can beat that performance. So I expect a hungry team. I think that's the best way to try to slow down those 2 receivers that you got outside, because you don't want to just let this team start to get into a rhythm. I don't want Coach Stefanski to get into a play calling rhythm where they can get back in stride and try to make up some ground in the AFC North. Like, no. That's not what we can have happen on Sunday.
All right, Anthony. So we're gonna let you get to the kids. We don't want to put you in the doghouse. But
we all good. I think I got him handled now, man. He wanted that bowl of cereal. I told you he wanted the cornflakes. Kid came and got me and was like, dude, I need cereal. I need a bowl and milk and a spoon. So I made it. So for what it's worth, for my fact that I had to step away, I got you like another 5 minutes.
Oh, let's do it. So Landover, Maryland. When are we getting a new stadium out there?
Man, you know what?
They need a new stadium, right?
You know what? The thing is, though, is that literally before the sale happened, people were trying to kick him out. Like they were like, we don't want you in Virginia. We don't want you in DC. We don't want you here. The sale happens. And now you have everybody's rolling out red carpet. They're like, oh yeah, come down here. And I mean, I'm not in that area to follow it daily, but I just feel like right now, Josh Harris and crew, they're making an investment in that stadium. And that may be the best play for the time being because they are similar to the Browns. They practice in Ashburn, Virginia, but the drive to get to the stadium is like almost an hour. And, you're not really connected to that part of the town. And if you change facilities, are you going to now you have to move families? And there's just a lot that goes into it. So I think, hey, continue to make the improvements where they are right now. Keep investing in that stadium. In the organization at the stadium and at the facility, they're doing those things, but it's got to be close. It's got to be close. So I would say if you've had to pick a number, probably they'll make a decision within the next 3 to 5 years.
You also made a comment earlier. I know this is getting away from Commanders and Browns, but you made a comment earlier, and I would be remiss if I did not ask you about the experience that you had in 2014 in Berea. In training camp with the Cleveland Browns, the Johnny Manziel year, and the circus that was that whole situation, man. It had to have been crazy to be a player in that situation.
Man, I tell you, the way I got to Cleveland was kind of kismet. It was one of those just, the universe is aligning. Like I literally had a voicemail from Kyle Shanahan that I hadn't returned for 2 years. And I finally returned and he's like, yo, you want to play ball? And I was still in shape, mind you. So I wasn't a scrub. I was still in shape. And so I was like, yeah. And that was when Josh Gordon was out and they needed a receiver and everything was starting to fit. And there was a little bit of discrepancy between the GM and the OC. And I was, easy pickings, I guess. I was ready to ball out. I was like, okay, cool, we in. Like, I know the offense. Like, this is going to be good. And things changed. But when Johnny came in, like, everything was cool. First thing I asked him, I said, I heard you're an asshole. And he said, where'd you hear that from? I was like, I just heard it around. I'm like, is it true? He's like, no, I'm not an asshole. I'm like, all right, fair enough. Let's get to work. And that was basically it, man. I mean, I'm like the answer to a trivia question, like who caught his first pass in preseason? That would be me. So it was against Detroit. So, it was cool. It was interesting to just be around that because everything that you heard about outside of the facility, I never saw it. You know what I mean? I'm a homebody anyways, right? So I didn't hear about all that other stuff. I wasn't in the quarterback meeting room, but now he was performing. I was just like, hey man, we got a ball when we're on the field. Whatever you do on the side, that's your thing, but we need to get it. We need to have action on the field.
So he never passed you the money.
I never what? What'd you say?
He never passed you the money phone when he had the stack of money. And
no, man! I wish. Shoot, throw me a couple 20s or something.
All right, Anthony.
You got to play with Hall of Famer Joe Thomas, so you had that at least. We'll
yeah, Joe's a cool dude. I remember one day I went over there. He's on his laptop in his locker, and I sneak up. I was like, Joe, what are you doing, man? He's like, oh, I'm just buying a tractor. I'm like, looked over there. It was a comma and like 60. It's a big ass tractor, man. Dude, just buying a tractor. I mean, consummate professional, Hall of Fame. I mean, he held it down for the left side for years. I mean, to think that you already know you have that position covered, like that's very comforting, So shout out to Joe Thomas, man.
All right, Anthony.
Joe Thomas story. That sounds exactly like something he would do.
Buying tractors. All right, man. Give us your biggest key as you look at the Commanders and the Browns this Sunday, again in Landover, Maryland. A home game for the Commanders. We know the Browns have been off to a terrible start. The Commanders are red hot, but give your key to this game and where you think, just kind of your prediction for how this game's going to go.
My biggest key and what I need Washington to do is to come out hot, right? Whoever shows up early, I think is going to kind of determine where this game goes. Because if you're coming in, Cleveland has been struggling, and if they are jumped on quickly by the Commanders, I don't know if they're going to be able to want to fight back from that, right? They just be saying, oh, here we go again. But then on the other side, if Washington is coming out slow and they're punting and you're not having that same offensive performance that you've had over the past few weeks, now maybe Cleveland starts to get a little bit of life. So I'm wanting to see how Washington shows up. I think the game is all on them. Not much pressure for Cleveland right now. They'll be a whole other offseason for Cleveland, how things go. But for Washington, how they've been so hot and everybody's talking about them, they have to come out hot. They have to come out by putting up some points to make sure the game goes in their favor.
All right, Anthony Armstrong, man. So much fun having you on, co-host of the Believe in Commanders podcast. So if you want to know what they are talking about on the Commanders side of things as they head into this game against the Browns, check out the Believe in Commanders podcast, as I'm sure you guys will be breaking that down. Again, former Cleveland Browns wide receiver, former Washington wide receiver, and a good overall dad, getting cereal for the kids.
Damn good dad. Now, hey, mind y'all, they did eat regular food first. Now it wasn't just cereal for dinner. Y'all out there judging me in the comments. They go, he giving them cereal for dinner. They had Chick-fil-A first. Thank you very much.
Ooh, excellent choice. But also,
now I'm gonna get him in the bath. Y'all be good, man. Good luck on Sunday.
Thank you.
Hey, appreciate it, Anthony. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, y'all be good.
Man, Anthony Armstrong, big shout out to him. Go follow him on Twitter at Rated Armstrong. And again, check out the Believe in Commanders podcast. All right, Abby, so we've got a little time left here. We started hitting on some of the things as far as how bad things have been for the Cleveland Browns.
Right.
But listen to Anthony kind of talk about the Commanders, their start. I don't know, man. How are we feeling going into this game? I don't know that I could be any lower.
Yeah, it is hard to be lower on this team right now, especially because I think a lot of what the Commanders are good at is things that they can use to exploit the Browns, specifically like we were talking about earlier on about their run game, and what can come from that is something that definitely concerns me. I think more so though, we're all just wondering how the offense is going to look. Like, even if Deshaun Watson puts on a similar performance to what he did last week, where it felt like we were getting a better version of him, we still might not have, the receivers stepping up. The drop balls could continue. I don't know what this offensive line is going to look like. Are they going to make any improvements? I don't even know if that's in them at this point in time. So it's hard to feel optimistic when we haven't really been able to see it come together in a full game at all yet this year.
It does, though. I don't want to be too down. It does feel like there's a little sleeping giant moment that's going to happen at some point. Again, this has not been a great Commanders defense. They've given up a lot of points. Now, has that mattered for the Browns? No, they haven't played. Well, they played the Cowboys. That was a good defense. Otherwise, not a lot of great defenses.
Yeah.
Have they played this year? But it just feels like, and I don't know, maybe it was the moment, we talked about it in the post-game show, Abby, maybe it was the moment where they were kind of, Deshaun's yelling at DeJuan Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Jameis is yelling at everybody on the sideline. I feel like that's the life I wanted to see. And I'm wondering if those moments, while they didn't in the end affect the game on Sunday, I wonder if those moments are how they build into hey, we're better than this, and we got to play with a little bit more pride. And again, maybe that sleeping giant wakes up. Yeah,
it feels like, I feel like when that moment first happened, when Deshaun was yelling at DeJuan Jones, I was kind of like, oh, that's not a good sign. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, maybe that is the intensity we need, like for those guys to be like truthfully speaking to each other about how poorly things are going and getting angry so that they can move forward from there, because it feels like everyone was kind of walking on eggshells almost, like even in the like media availability, the way a lot of the players have been talking, the vibes have been so strange that it feels like maybe if they just get all of that anger out and they're like, okay, here's how it is, this is how things are going, that they can build from there. And maybe they do need a little bit more of that intensity for that to happen.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because on my other show on Garage Beers, we always play the schedule game with Cameron Justice, and we asked her, because she's there every day at training camp, we asked her how, this training camp, how is it different? And she said before the season that the vibe at training camp was just weird. It
Yeah.
was just weird. And that's not a good sign going into a season.
No. Yeah,
Um,
especially compared to last summer. I don't feel like last summer, I feel like people were excited in general, and the players seemed, I don't know, just more a different intensity in the way that they were speaking about where the team could go. It didn't feel like there was as much optimism in the way the players were talking this summer at all.
So, Abby, as I'm sure you've seen all over social media, people are throwing blame for the way the Brown season has started everywhere.
Right.
And they're throwing it at Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey, and they're throwing it at Andrew Berry, and they're throwing it at Deshaun Watson and Amari Cooper and the offensive line, and everybody's taking hits of the blame. So let's run through this real quick. If we were to put in order of, especially offensively, we got this team filled with stud players.
Yeah.
That hasn't scored 20 points yet in a game against bad defenses.
Right.
Where are we throwing that blame? What's the order? What's the order of blame that we're going to put on the team?
It's so hard to say because, like we were talking about earlier, it's different each game on like what I would weigh that more on. Like prior to this game, I would probably say the quarterback because he's just able to impact the game in a larger way than everyone else, and just what the expectations are of him as what was supposed to be like an elite quarterback that could overcome issues, and we weren't seeing that. So I would put most of it in, I would say, prior to this previous game on the quarterback. But then obviously we saw last week, he was able to improve in a lot of different areas, and it didn't matter very much. We still dealt with a lot of the same issues. So yeah, I think I'm going quarterback one. When you look at like the staff front office, I would have to go more Andrew Berry than I would Kevin Stefanski in terms of just like roster construction on like, I don't know if we have all of the right pieces that are necessary. Obviously, injuries you can't account for, so I don't want to blame the front office for that. Like, you don't expect your entire offensive line to get injured the way that they have been. That's a really hard thing to prepare for. But I would say more on the roster construction end for me than the coaching.
Yeah, and I think it's, I could see that in certain areas, but I'm seeing it in the comments here too about not addressing the tackle and the guard position.
Right.
They draft a lineman, but I don't know that anybody thought that Jack Conklin wasn't going to see the field.
Bizarre.
The first month of the season. I don't know that anybody thought that Jed Wills wasn't going to see the field the first 3. So I think Andrew Berry looked at the offensive line and went, all right, we got Wills, we got Conklin. Wills got to play himself into a contract. So we're hopeful that he'll come out with a little bit of motivation. But then behind them, we got 3 guys at tackle that I think they came into the season feeling pretty good about.
Yeah.
DeJuan Jones after his season last year, and then Conklin and Wills. And you might not love Jed Wills, and I know people love him, but he's a pretty average tackle in the league when he's healthy.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know, like on the Andrew Berry side of things, I don't know, like how many teams have 4 or 5 good tackles?
Yeah, I feel like that's something I'm constantly talking about on like every show is that like no one has a great offensive line across the board. It is so hard to find talent on that front unless you draft it. You're not really like trading for good offensive tackles and good linemen. Like that's just not really an option because if you have a good one, you're signing him to an extension. Like that's just the reality of it. And maybe that also goes back to roster construction though, and the fact that we gave away years worth of first round picks that could have, in a way been used on the offensive line. So it was hard that we didn't have the assets available to fill some of those holes. But yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with you that across the board in the league, it's hard to find an offensive line that top to bottom, you feel really good about the talent that's there.
It's got to be, I would love to talk to some of the guys on the team candidly.
Yeah.
As far as the way this season has started.
Yeah.
Because it just feels like such a snowball effect, doesn't it? It's the offensive line isn't playing well. Deshaun Watson was brutally bad the first few weeks. He was much better last week.
Right.
Much better. But it's so, you've got so many uncharacteristic things happening. again, we talked about missed tackles before. We've talked about Amari Cooper leading the league in drop passes. What? Who would have? You could have like said, "I'll give you 1,000-to-1 odds on that."
Yeah.
I wouldn't take the bet going into the season. It feels like everything's just a snowball effect, and everybody's getting pulled. It's like the avalanche. Everybody's just getting swallowed up.
Yeah. Yeah, the Murray thing is so bizarre still because I'm not like a conspiracy theory person, but I'm like, what is going on with him? Like, I can't wrap my brain around the repeated drops, and there's just like a part of me that thinks he just doesn't want to be here. Just in the way he's kind of been conducting, just carrying himself on the field. It's a very strange thing because he is not someone that I expected to be a liability for this team this season.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's weird. And I think, we talked a little bit earlier about how obviously we're missing Nick Chubb, and that's been, a part of the offense that's missing. We're also missing David Njoku. And I feel like people keep forgetting about that fact just because he went out, very early on in this season. But he was such an impactful part of the offense, towards the end of last season. He really, caught his own stride. And I just feel like getting him back, like I'm hoping maybe we'll eventually, in the coming weeks here, we'll see some juice for the offense from him. Because that's really all I feel like can hope for at this point is if you get Nick and you get David back, that it can just create some momentum for the offense.
Well, again, hopefully going into this week, and as we, again, go back and look at this matchup, there's certain things that you should just expect out of the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah.
And Jaden Daniels has been such a good start. It's such a good start to that kid's career. But he's a rookie playing in his 5th football game in the NFL. And this is a defense for the Browns that prides itself on attacking the quarterback, making life uncomfortable, forcing mistakes. Even if they've done that this year, again, there just always seems to be somebody that misses a tackle or drops interception or whatever. There needs to be an expectation for the Browns this week. That should be the entire focus of practice is, hey, this kid's off to a great start in his career. We need to go out and make him look like a rookie.
Yeah. Yeah, because especially the last 2 weeks, he hasn't really looked like a rookie. Like I mentioned earlier, the confidence he's playing with, his ability to like anticipate throws has been not like many rookies, where he is seeing things in a way that it feels like sometimes it takes guys years to be able to anticipate or at least get the confidence to throw those balls. Usually I feel like they're a little more hesitant at the start. Like, I don't know, not going to go for that, shake the boat too much. But that 2 weeks ago, that touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin, the way he anticipated that was really impressive. So yeah, I do like, I obviously hope that they're able to expose him for being a rookie, but it is pretty wild that he hasn't, at least in the last 2 weeks, in my opinion, looked very rookie-like at most times.
Well, hopefully, again, I know last week was a disaster when you go to a Raiders team that their coach is talking about business decisions. And now it seems more and more like Devontae Adams was put out of that game. And that wasn't just a fun decision or an injury decision, but that was an organizational decision. They don't have Max Crosby, but there were the little hints of positive things. Mm-hmm. One thing I like is when they continue to run the ball, even if it's not going great, Jerome Ford always will pop one off at some point. You just keep giving him the ball.
He does get one.
3 or 4 yards, but he'll pop one off. He did in that game. Yeah. Again, Deshaun looked the best that he's looked all season. And was it great? I don't know. If that pass stands to Amari Cooper, I think Deshaun looked pretty great. And his numbers, you wipe an 82-yard touchdown off the board, and now his numbers don't look quite as good. But I think there was a lot of like, okay, I can see them trying to figure this out, trying to come around. Again, for me, this is all going to come down to that offensive line. If that offensive line comes out and gives them a little bit of time and allows them to play their brand of football, again, I think the Browns are ready. It's just they've got to get over the mental hurdles.
Yeah. And, the other thing that we have seen from this team repeatedly is their ability to come out in that first drive, that scripted drive, head down the field, get us all so pumped. We're like, all right, we're back. This is good. Kevin, great play calling. Everyone executed perfectly. And then goes downhill from there. If, I'm going to be crossing my fingers this week, watch that first drive. Okay. Don't get too excited. Hopefully we can improve from there and continue to put together some good drives.
I don't know. I am almost wishing that we just go 3 and out on the first drive.
Yeah.
And maybe that
reverse psychology. Yeah. I got to mess with the mojo a little.
They've scored on their first drive every game this season.
It's crazy.
So maybe a 3 and out, and then they'll score on their next 3 or 4 possessions, as opposed to scoring on their first drive and then not scoring again until the second half.
It's crazy.
I did see a question in the comments for you, Abby. I'm going to go off the Browns for a minute.
Oh, yeah.
But there was a question in the comments. I don't know where it went. It's way far back. But how many playoff baseball games is Abby Mueller attending this year?
Very important questions. I am definitely going to the second game of the ALDS. So that's on my schedule so far. Hopefully, can go to some ALCS games, assuming that the Guardians are going to make it. Fingers crossed. But definitely at least making it to one game 2 there of the ALDS. Go Guards.
The Guards they're the opposite of the Browns. Again, a team that's just found ways to win.
Always.
When they were not picked to do what they did, they found a way. I hope the Browns pay attention to the Guardians and say, hey, look what they did. We need to come out and we need to put it to this Washington Commanders team that they should. This is, again, the talent level for the Browns is as high as any other team that they're going to face.
Yeah.
And they've got to come out and stick it to the Commanders this week. It's just, I can't. 1-4? 1-4? They can't be 1-4. They can't be 1-4.
You couldn't have paid me to think that was going to be our record, like could potentially even be our record after looking at the schedule when it came out, seeing like, okay, the first couple of games, it felt like we had some easier matchups. And then, later in the schedule, things were getting really hard and it's been not what we expected.
But again, that's the point of a long football season, right?
Yeah.
And they're off to a terrible start.
Yeah.
And it's been wildly disappointing. But they have an opportunity to take it. It's been Kevin Stefanski's mantra his whole time he's been here.
Yeah.
Week by week, game by game. And they can go out and start playing better. And we can also look back and be like, hey, remember when we were 1-3? That was hilarious. As they beat Baltimore or they beat Cincinnati or they beat other good teams that are on their schedule. That's still in front of them.
Yeah. Hopefully this year our continued record of always beating Cincinnati is standing, because that for us, at least previously, I think has really motivated them when we can like go and dominate against the Bengals every time. So, I think I guess our first matchup against them is like late October, or I don't know if it's like late October. So hopefully that comes at a good point to maybe like really start motivating them when they know this is a team that we know how to play. We've done it before, can do it again.
I don't know if you've seen, I just saw this actually not long ago. The betting line, the over under on Browns wins in Vegas right now is 5.5.
Ugh.
That's where we're at.
I think I took the over when it was 8.5, so I'm not feeling very good about that right now.
I still feel good about it. Still feel good. Look, MC says MC's not buying what I'm selling. I don't care. You better start buying. Start buying, because again, they've got the pieces. They've got the pieces, and they've got the coach, and they've got the wide receivers and the defense, and it's going to take 1 or 2 guys. That's going to be what it is. And again, maybe you saw it. We talked about it. Maybe you saw it last week in the verbal section. But it's going to take 1 or 2 guys. It's going to take JOK saying, "I'm not going to miss any more tackles." And JOK's been great, but he's missed some tackles.
Right.
It's going to take MJ Emerson getting himself together, or Greg Newsome making a big play. It's going to take a couple of these guys. That's how fickle this can be, right? It's off to a terrible start. But 1 or 2 guys start playing the way that they should and start going out there and being the top level football organization and players that we expect them to be, that can change the whole season.
Yeah.
And that's what they need to have that start this week.
I was just thinking about, I don't know if you saw Rodney McLeod, the clips from him that came out earlier today. I forget what radio station he was on, but just talking about, you mentioned with coaching and Kevin and having the right coach. I know there's a lot of criticism out there about Kevin, and I get it. There's definitely been issues with the play calling at times, but to hear him speak about how like important it is during times like this to have a level-headed mind in that organization, to just kind of, not be too high, not be too low when things are bad, not be too emotional, and just kind of keep things even keeled. I do think it helps to have someone like that at that point in time, and puts us in a good position moving forward, because if you had someone so emotional, it might affect the locker room in a deeper way.
Speaking of Stefanski, I was a little confused last week. Because I didn't mind what he did.
Mm-hmm.
He took a timeout before the biggest play of the game, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, well, if he didn't take that timeout, then he'd have 3 to get the ball back. Yeah, your offense, though, would get the ball back after a punt all the way at the other side of the field, because I don't know if you remember watching the Raiders punter, but he was just smashing the ball all the way down to the other side of the field.
MVP.
Yeah, right. I didn't mind that. I don't know how you feel, but I didn't mind that timeout at all. You've got the ball in scoring position. It's the biggest play of the game.
Yeah.
Take the timeout. Get your play right. It wasn't right, obviously, but I'd much rather have that. I'm not just going to save timeouts for fun.
Yeah. No, I agree. I didn't have as much of a problem with it as everyone else, because it kind of felt like if we weren't going to score in that moment, that we weren't going to have the opportunity. It wasn't going to happen. Like it just felt like you needed to get it in that moment. So I'm with you. Like, especially if you didn't feel good about the play and wanted a little extra time to think about it, or, whatever, take the time out there. I didn't have as big of a problem with it either.
Yeah. All right, Abby, we're going to get ready to wrap things up here on the Doghouse, but let's talk about, give me your prediction for the game on Sunday in Maryland, Commanders and Browns. Do the Browns get off the schneid, or are the Commanders just too good to start this year?
Gosh, I just can't pick the Browns right now at this point in time with what I've seen from them. I think it could end up being a close game, but until I see this offense put up more than like 20 points, I just, with the way the Commanders offense has been firing on all cylinders, like I think they're going to be able to put up more than 20 points for their offense. So, I think until I see our offense do that, I'm going to have to go with the Commanders. Sorry. I don't want it to be that way. I don't.
No, the Browns defense, it's a noted situation that they don't travel well.
Yeah.
Even though they got a win in Jacksonville this year, which was nice. But Browns defense has been much worse on the road than it's been at home. And Washington's off to a great start. I am actually going to pick the Browns in this one. I don't know what I'm there must be something in my beverage. But I think that there's a pride. There's too many really good players on this team.
Yeah.
And I think there's a pride situation that has to come into play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you started to see it last week, even though they didn't play well. And I just feel like this is the week where this looks like Jaden Daniels' worst game, and the defense is going to come out flying. And I think there's enough to build on offensively that I don't know what it is. I don't know why I'm picking it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've said forever that until Deshaun Watson proves that he can do it over and over again, I'm not picking him. But something about this game.
Yeah.
I just feel like Myles Garrett's going to come out. Myles Garrett with no feet is still better than anybody else. Again, JOK, I think, is going to make a play. I think they're going to get a couple turnovers in this game. And I feel like the Browns, I can't see them going 1-4. I just can't see it.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, like you said, the pieces are there. They have the guys to do it. Just got to get it done.
Well, Abby, first of all, thank you so much for coming in. And our special guest, who was amazing, but said he could only jump on for a little bit. So I wanted to make sure that we were able to talk a little bit more. And Abby, you graciously jumped in and joined to talk a little Browns. Really appreciate that. Make sure you go follow Abby, which you're already doing, I know. Big shout out to Anthony Armstrong. What a guest. What a good guy. Again, former wide. I didn't even look up his stuff that he was with the Browns. But some good stories from the Johnny Manziel era. And just a really awesome time talking Browns Commanders with him. Go follow him and the Believe in Commanders podcast online. And again, make sure you are following everything OBR, your home for Cleveland Browns coverage here in Cleveland. The oldest and the largest independent Browns coverage site is the OBR. And so make sure you're subscribed to the OBR.com and make sure you're subscribed to the streaming network everywhere. And that's going to do it for the Doghouse. I'm going to go take a quick break, and then I'll be back at 9 o'clock with Garage Beers. We're talking Guardians playoffs. We're going to yell about the Browns. I'm sure we're going to yell about the Browns. There's some Cavs stuff to talk about. We're going to get into all that on Garage Beers. So go grab yourself a beverage, go hang out, and come back and hang out with us on Garage Beers at 9 o'clock. Otherwise, for Abby, at Abby_Mueller_ on Twitter, I am Michael Keefe. It was awesome having you into the Doghouse, and we will see you again next week. Until then, cheers and go Browns.